Hello everyone, my name is Jess Swart from J Swart Behavior Consulting. I am here today going live to answer any questions and go through some tips today. So today I'm really going to be focusing on talking about tolerating no. Have you ever been in a situation where your child asks you for something that they can't have, or they want to go somewhere that they can't go, and you have to tell them no? And what happens? Do you get an immediate explosion? Do you get a punch? Do you get a kick? Do you get a scream? Do you get a throwing of a toy, throwing of a chair? I've had situations like that for sure within my therapy. I've worked with children who have very high level behaviors, so much so that we have to reduce those triggers initially and then slowly build them up. The behaviors have been so explosive and dangerous. Do your kids sometimes try to abscond or run away? This is a huge concern, right? We want to make sure our children are safe, and if we are doing something that triggers them and leads them to absconding, then this is something we end up avoiding. So I don't want you to just think that you have to avoid these triggers, because that is not a long-term solution. Yes, there might be some times when we reduce the triggers or limit them initially while we build our child's capacity, but there's always a skill to teach. There's always a way to help build our children's capacity. And that's my big belief. I feel like our children have so much potential, and my goal is really to increase our children's capacity so that they can reach their full potential, so that they can show their true selves and be the incredible individuals that they are. Without some of these behaviors that are often barriers to our kids really showing their incredible capacities and abilities and creativity and beautiful personalities. So today I just am going to pause a little bit. There might be some times where I check my comments and make sure I've got everything together. All right. I think we're doing well so far. All right, so I am going to start off. I'm going to go through, I've got some notes here just to remind me to make sure I cover everything. I work a lot with children and parents to help include strategies and go through processes to improve our kids' capacity to tolerate no, or denial of items, of activities, not getting what they want straight away, waiting, things like that. So there's a lot of information. That's why I'm referring to some notes. Before I jump into things, I just want to reference my Understanding Autism Behavior, the Parent Roadmap. This is my mini course, and some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today are in this mini course. There's more detail about understanding why behaviors occur in the first place, what preventative strategies we can use to reduce the likelihood of behaviors occurring, and how to increase our children's skills so they don't need to be so reactive. I also talk about how we react as adults, as parents, as caregivers, so that we don't accidentally reinforce our children's behaviors. Now, sometimes we will do that intentionally, knowing that it'll de-escalate a situation, but ultimately we want to improve. We want to make sure we're not reinforcing the inappropriate behavior too often. So this course has about 3 hours of content. It's got a worksheet. It's got pre-recorded trainings broken down into 10 to 15 minute videos. So it's really easily digestible. You can watch, a couple a day. You can listen to them while you're driving. You can watch them while you're cooking dinner, whatever works. And at the end, the goal is to come out with a plan that you can implement with your child. So you'll choose a specific behavior of concern, and I work through that with you step by step as I give you the training, so that then you have a plan at the end that you can go and implement yourself. Now, I am providing things like this and some other community-based connections where you can reach out to me and connect at specific times, maybe to ask questions, or if you do one of my courses, one of my other courses, the Busting Behaviors Protocol, includes regular accountability and weekly check-ins. So that's a really great course. It's a much bigger course. It goes through everything. It actually goes through how to teach your child to tolerate no or tolerate denial of certain things, very specifically in a few different ways. Anyway, let's get into it today. So if you do have any questions along the way, please write a comment here. Tolerating no. This is really a skill that we need to learn. It can be really triggering for our kids, and I don't want you to think you just have to avoid saying no, right? That's not the answer or the solution to helping our kids deal with this. It's a fact of life. We get told no all the time. So there might be a point, perhaps if your child is really reactive, you might need to reduce the frequency of the word no initially, just to get things down to like a bit of a baseline, and then build them up and slowly introduce that word again into your vocabulary. But I'm going to give you today a few other phrases and words you can use as opposed to just saying no. Now, I'd like you to think about understanding your child's perspective. I often talk about this in my courses. We start with understanding, and often behavior change means that we need to change our own behavior before we can change our children's behavior or expect any behavior change from our children. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means that you might need to tweak things or do something different, and you might not know about these things because you might not have been brought up in this world, or you might not have this education. I'm a behavior analyst. I've been through a master's degree in behavior. I've worked in this field for over 25 years. So I have that experience and kind of technical knowledge about the science of behavior to understand it. So it's okay if you don't know. Don't feel bad. So when our kids aren't coping with no, it's not that they're intentionally defiant or manipulative or intentionally trying to be difficult for us. It's just that they don't have the tolerance and coping skills to cope with that. It's disappointing for them. They don't like this, they don't like not really being in control, right? It can be a control thing. A lot of our autistic kids, they like to have things in control because it helps reduce anxiety and it helps the predictability of a situation. So control is a big thing, and it's not necessarily bad. It just means that we can understand this is difficult for our kids because they're not in control of the situation. They're disappointed. They didn't get what they want. So they are reacting and responding to it because they don't have the capacity to regulate their emotions. So there's lots of factors here, right? It can be quite simple, but it actually can be quite complex when we delve into it. So that no creates an unexpected situation. They might have already had a clear image in their head of what is going to happen, and then that outcome doesn't occur. So they're like, I don't like this, right? Imagine yourself, right? Think about situations where you're told no or you don't get what you want. Are you able to cope with that all the time? Probably not. For sure, myself, when I don't get what I want sometimes, when I'm really expecting it and, you know, I've changed plans to do something, perhaps, you know, I've organized something with a friend and, you know, I've changed my schedule so that I can make this happen. And then all of a sudden they say, no, I can't do that. So I feel a bit frustrated about that. I might respond in a certain way. I'm not just going to be calm about it. Maybe I'm going to express a bit of frustration. Maybe I'm going to communicate to some other friend and complain about it. Maybe I'm going to go do some deep breathing myself. Maybe I'm going to meditate. Maybe I'm going to go for a walk. So all of these things are strategies that I have to cope with not getting what I want. So keep in mind that our kids don't always have these strategies. Our autistic children don't innately have these tools to draw on to be able to cope with that response. So let's start with understanding our children's perspective. Waiting is another big thing. So waiting is difficult to do. Our kids want things straight away. In our society, naturally, we have been a bit conditioned with technology and everything that we get feedback really quickly. You know, our attention span has been impacted by this. So waiting for something can be a difficult skill for our kids, and it could be another skill that they need to learn alongside of tolerating no. Understanding where something is available and not available. They might not have that understanding that, you know, swimming is not available at 10 p.m. at night. Okay, we can't go to the pool at 10 p.m. at night, or we can't get up in the morning and go straight to the park because you know, it's too cold, or because we have to eat breakfast first. So some of our kids don't understand that concept of time and what's available and what's not available. That term that we sometimes use, maybe later, is really arbitrary. It's really unclear. Our kids don't understand what maybe and later means. It's very broad. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 days, it could be never. So when our children hear these words, they're not understanding their meaning, or they understand the meaning but they're very vague. So we want to try to be a bit more specific when we're communicating to our children. And also, I want you to think about previous experiences. So previously, when they've been told no, they didn't get what they want, and maybe they didn't get it for a really long time. So next time they hear no, they automatically expect that this means I'm not going to get it for a really long time, when maybe the no is just not right now, but in 10 minutes. So once again, our kids, because of their past experience with hearing the no, might have a preconceived notion of what that means. All right. So as I've said, this doesn't necessarily mean you have to say yes to your child. If your child is really highly reactive to the word no, I would recommend thinking of other ways that you can tell them something is not available right now, as opposed to saying the word no. Some of the kids I've worked with have been specifically reactive to that word, so we've reduced the use of it and slowly introduced it in a staggered way. Okay, so the goal of this is not just it's not just to enable your child to accept no and be fully calm. Okay, it's not realistic. We want our children to learn to cope with no in an appropriate way, to be able to regulate themselves appropriately when they don't like hearing that word no. So we can use a range of different strategies. It's about teaching them what no really means, that it might just mean later or at another time. It's teaching them how to express their disappointment. It's teaching them to know how to recover from frustration and disappointment, right? That recovery phase, that getting back to homeostasis, that kind of balance point, that regulation point. It's about teaching them to accept alternatives, and when something is available later but not right now, and cope with those difficult feelings. All right, so let's jump into it. I'm going to give you 4 different ways or different elements to help your child cope with no. So we're going to go through 1, some proactive strategies. 2, we're going to talk about making your language clear. And 3, we're going to talk about teaching the skills. So we're going to teach tolerance, communication, and expressing frustration. And then number 4, we're going to talk about increasing reinforcement. And at the end of my my tip Wednesday today, at the end of my Facebook Live, I will talk about reactive strategies very quickly, because sometimes we do have to know how to respond when behaviors occur. So firstly, proactive. I love this little strategy. If your child, you know, they don't need to necessarily be able to understand lots of language for this. If your child can understand what images represent and or words. So I get a piece of paper. I do have this prepared in a document, but to be honest, I want to show you a way to just whip it up really quickly so you can do this right now or tonight when you're at home. And what you're going to do is you're going to fold your piece of paper in half and you're going to have a section at the top. So we've got a blank piece of paper here. I am going to draw a line down the middle. And on one side, I'm going to write available. And maybe if the child I'm working with or my child, I know they don't really, they can't read. So I'm going to put a symbol there, right there, available, okay? And then not available. And I'm just going to do our usual cross. You might like to get fancy and whip this up on your computer and print it out. But if you don't have the time to do that, this is super quick and easy. So we've got not available. So proactively, I'm going to write down or draw images of items and activities that are often available or unavailable. So I like to do this, I usually do have a printed and laminated sheet, so I can put a dry erase marker on there and I can write things or draw images and rub them off, or I have a number of images already pre-printed and laminated so that I can Velcro them on or take them off depending on what is available or not available at different times of the day. So this is really great for situations where your child is always asking for the same thing when it's not available. Okay, so for example, maybe your child is always asking for an ice cream right before dinner time, and you're like, no, we're about to have dinner, you can't have that, and it leads to a massive meltdown. With this, you can whip this up, draw a picture of an ice cream to say it's not available, right? I am not the best artist, so please don't judge me on my drawing skills. So if I'm putting something on the not available side, I want to make sure I have a couple choices on the available side as much as possible, right? Some alternatives. So our kids have another option. So it's not just a flat no, right? Having choice and control is super important to empower our kids, and we want to provide other options for them. So maybe it's that they can, instead they can have an apple. I know it's not as good as an ice cream, but you know, maybe they still like apples, or oranges. Mine is orange, actually. We can say an orange. Or they can have like a granola bar, something like that. So once again, my drawings aren't great. I often print images. So we've got this here, right? Not available, the ice cream, but available are these items. So that could apply to anything. You have that sheet and you change it as the availability of different items change. A great thing about this is that when my child asks for ice cream, instead of saying no, I can say not available. Or the recommendation I would give is to not say anything at all and point to it. Sometimes we need to teach our children first. We need to say not available means like, you can't have it right now. It's not possible. No, we can't have it. And for some kids, maybe we even put a cross through that item, right? And if I have these images as Velcro, I can take this off and put it on the available side when they can ask for an ice cream, right? So in this, if they ask for it, I'm more likely to point. So if they say, I want ice cream, I might just go, you can have orange or granola bar, right? So I'm not even saying no. I don't have to engage in it. I can point and move away. I can disengage so that I don't get this back and forth tug of war, conflicting engagement with my child, right? I want to be neutral, calm, and give space for them to cope with that. So that's one proactive strategy. You could even print, and I have these like just X's, like crosses, or that red circle with a line through it, and I might stick those on items or certain places around the house. Say for example, you know, there's no access to snacks right now, so I put the X on the pantry cupboard door, or maybe there's no TV, so I put an X on the TV to show that there's no TV time. So I might use images and visuals to help out my child understand what is available and what's not available right now throughout the house, if it's something they're often asking for. Now, when we talk about getting to a bit of a higher level of language, I want to give a pre-warning to my child that a no response is coming. So if they ask for something that I know I have to deny, I might start off with telling them, do you know what? I'm about to give you a no response. Are you ready for that? Some of the kids I work with are like, no, I'm not ready. I'm like, okay, I'll give you some time. We'll wait. Right? So that's already given them some time to process the information and to get ready for what's to come. Even though they still might not like it and they still might find it hard to cope. So we've got that pre-warning. I might also remind them, hey, a no response is about to come. Can you remember what we do when someone says no? What do we do? What do we say? And I'm going to explain to you in a little bit a process that we can go through. I have a visual sheet where we teach our children the steps for coping with a no response. And then we have social stories or visual schedules that we can use, right? Where we might have, I have a no social story that I often go through with children. So I'll read that before we practice, or I'll read that at points in the day when I know they're typically going to start to ask for things that I have to refuse or have to say no to. All right, our strategy number 2 was making our language, changing our language. So this is about making our language more, clearer and more precise. So I'm just, yeah, make your language clear. That's what I said. Got to remember what I'm saying. Make your language clear. So we might, as I've said, we might need to avoid saying no for a period of time if our children are highly reactive to it and it's leading to high level aggression and reactive behaviors. So what I'd like you to try to do is start saying yes and, okay? If they ask for ice cream, you can say yes, and you can have it at 7 p.m. Or yes, and that's happening tomorrow. I want to go swimming. Yes, we're swimming tomorrow, right? So, and maybe you show them the calendar so they know when tomorrow is. So as much as possible, trying to put a yes and phrase in there, that will help de-escalate your child's response initially. It's not the answer to everything. We can't always say yes, right? Maybe you don't want to take them to McDonald's ever again. So there might not be a yes and, or maybe you're like, I'm never going to the trampoline fun place again. So there's never a yes. And that's okay. So we don't always have to try to say yes. So some other phrases we can say are not now, but then we can say after dinner, or not now, tomorrow morning, not now, in 5 minutes. Okay, so you can say not now and then give them the time, the day, the time frame in which they will be able to access that thing. You might also use first then. I resort to this all the time. First dinner, then iPad. So they'll be like, I want iPad. You say first dinner, then iPad. So you didn't have to say no. You're just telling them what they first have to do before they can get what they want. You might be using a timer. So for example, maybe they have to wait for something. So you'll say yes, for when the timer rings, you can have it. Okay, and you'll set your timer for 10 minutes or for 3 minutes or whatever period of time your child has to wait for. You can also use the phrase finished or all done instead of no more or no. So you can say, for example, YouTube is finished or YouTube is all done instead of saying no YouTube, no more, right? Just thinking about changing that language. If something is completely unavailable, you can use the phrase, there's no more ice cream today. Okay, or there's no more, let me think. There's no more trains today. Trains are all done. Okay, it's all done. All done means finished. So think about some of those ways you can use those phrases. If there's a choice, you can give a choice. So this one is not available, you can have this or this. Okay, ice cream's not available, you can have orange or granola bar. Very simple there. So it might be that they want a blue cup, right, to drink out of. You can say blue cup is not available or blue cup all done. You can have red or green, right? So they have a choice. So think about pairing your words with like the time, a timer. So when you're saying something, you're using a visual timer, you're using a first then visual board, you're using a calendar to show them when it's occurring, when they can have something they've asked for, or you're using a visual schedule, right? A schedule of a number of different tasks and activities they need to do, and when is that preferred item or activity coming on that schedule so they know what to expect. Something I want you to avoid. I want you to avoid saying maybe or I'll think about it. Very arbitrary, very random, often leads to more frustration because the child has no clue when they can ever access this preferred thing that they're asking for, and it just leads to a high level of frustration and reactiveness. It's very abstract. So that's your homework, is to work on changing your language and removing that word maybe or I'll think about it or later, right? All very abstract concepts for our kids with autism who often struggle with language. Okay, number 3 is teach the skill. This is often a big thing that is missing from a lot of therapies and recommendations and courses and everything. Often people talk about setting up the environment and changing environmental factors and co-regulating with our child, which is important at some point in time for sure. But often what is missing is how do we teach the skill? And this is a big part of behavioral science, is learning how people learn, right? How we learn in general, and then breaking it down so our children who are neurodiverse can learn successfully. So we need to teach tolerance, we need to teach communication, we need to teach their ability to express frustration and regulate them. So I'm going to go through these things fairly quickly. I do go into a lot of detail in my Busting Behaviors Protocol, which is my 12-week full encompassing parent coaching course on positive behavior support. It includes accountability calls to keep you on track. So if you want more information about that, you can get in contact with me. So first we want to talk about breaking the skill down. I always say break it down, right? Break the skill down into achievable steps. So think about what your child can cope with and start there. So when we're talking about no, we will set up a scenario that is going to be easy for them to cope with and likely help them to be successful. In my Understanding Autism Behavior, the Parent Roadmap course, my mini course, I talk about the failure cycle that our kids often get into. That, you know, they get presented with something, they try something and then they fail. And then they get angry and upset and they get told off. And then they try it again and then they fail again and they get told off and they get in trouble and they get... So there's this horrible cycle of them failing. So they don't get exposed to the success that they can have, which helps motivate them to do more, to try harder, to keep going. So this is a big thing. When we're working on tolerating no, this is one example. There's multiple ways to teach it, but I'm going to give you one example. I will start off with my visual that has the steps for tolerating no. So I'll go through this and I'll say, okay, step 1 is to say okay. Step 2 is step 1 is to have calm body, right? So to have a calm face, a calm voice, calm body. So I'm not screaming, I'm not scowling, I'm not like, grrr, I'm not growling at the person, I'm not about to punch them. I'm in control of my body and I say okay and I take a deep breath and I make a choice, right? I choose something else. So I go through this with them. This is when they're calm. And then I will get them, I'll have usually my box of toys and I'll get them to choose what they want. I'll say, okay, what do you want? And they'll ask for maybe the massager. And then I'm going to say no. Right? And I'm going to prepare them. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to tell you no, and then I'm going to give you 2 other choices. So I will say, sorry, no, not right now. You can't have the massager right now. Or I might just say a plain old, no, not right now. And then I'm going to hold up 2 alternative choices. You know, I might say, but you can have coloring, or what else do I have here? Coloring or candle. Okay, maybe they like the smelly candle and they like it, they love drawing. So I provide them with 2 alternative preferred choices. This is the important thing. I'm starting easy. Their other options are still highly preferred items, so it's not hard to cope with that no, okay? They couldn't have the massager, but they could choose from 2 other things that they really like. And then they make a choice and I say, well done, you did it. Great coping with no, woohoo. And maybe then I give them the massager, okay? So I reinforce their coping skill. And this is really easy. And we practice this a few times. And then later I make it a bit harder. I provide choices that are less preferred or not as highly preferred, maybe moderately preferred items or activities. And then over time we practice and then I offer them less preferred items. So they're things that, you know, they aren't really interested that much in and that aren't as interesting as the thing that they wanted. So over time, they build their capacity with hearing this no, they build their capacity with making a choice of something else. Within the practice, sometimes I also transition to a plain no and I teach them to ask a question. And I might use a visual to prompt. So this is something else I have. I have already prepared that I print out and laminate sometimes, but I'm just going to whip it up now. I might write a phrase such as, what else can I have? So I might teach the child to say, what else can I have, right? I might say, okay, we're going to practice tolerating no. You're going to ask for something. I'm going to say no. And then you're going to say, what else can I have? Okay, ready? Here we go. What do you want? Ask for something. Do you want to go to the park? Do you want to go swimming? Do you want to go to McDonald's? These seem to be the things I've got on my mind right now. So I'll get them to ask a question. I'll say, no, not right now. And then they can say, what else can I have? Or another phrase that I teach them is when. So it might just be, I teach them to say the word when, or when can I have it? So for example, let me think. For example, going outside. A lot of our kids love going outside on the trampoline. And they say, I want to go outside on the trampoline. And I have to say, no, not right now. And then I get them to say when, right? And they say, when? And I'll say, oh, in 10 minutes. And we'll set the timer and they get to go out in 10 minutes. So that might be me practicing the skill so that then when it comes time to actually put it in place within your daily routine, the reaction isn't necessarily as big. And we can increase the difficulty over time when we're teaching these skills. So there are a couple examples. The important element in the teaching phase is that you reinforce the child's capacity to cope. And for our kids, when we get to the harder levels of teaching some of these skills, yes, they're going to get frustrated because we can't expect to just be able to cope with not getting what we want all the time. Sometimes we are more frustrated, right? So the practice might include getting the child to go to their room and take a break, or getting the child to do some, I don't know, smell a candle to help them regulate. Or it might be doing some crashes. I have one client at the moment when we're working on frustration tolerance, that if she gets really frustrated and can't keep working through the task, she'll go crash on the couch, right? And I feel like that is much more appropriate than what used to happen, which was picking up items and throwing them, or screaming, right? This high-pitched scream. So it's okay for us to teach our kids within that moment to go engage in an activity or a regulating task. It might be that they go jump on the mini tramp you've got at home, or that they get deep pressure squishes if that's helpful and regulating for them. All right, so we've talked about that teaching. Let me just check my notes here. We've talked about breaking the skill down and practicing it at times when your child is calm, when you don't really need to say no, but you're practicing that response. We've talked about teaching them to ask a question. When can I have it? What else can I have? More time. I didn't mention this. Sometimes I do teach children to ask for more time. So I might say, do you know what? The iPad is all done right now. And I'll teach them to ask, more time, please. And I say, sure, you can have 1 minute or 2 minutes. What do you want? Sometimes I'll say, I want 50 minutes, right? And I'll be like, sorry, that's not a choice. I'll give you 2 minutes. Okay, so I will, I'll give choice, and if they don't take that choice, I'll make the choice, and they will learn over time that that's the expectation, and that they still got more time from that response, and often that reduces the reactiveness when it comes time to actually finish. You can teach your child to use phrases like, I'm disappointed, or that's frustrating, or I don't like it, or ask for help. So it's okay to teach your child to say these phrases. It's a way for them to express their feelings and to express appropriately. I'd much prefer a child to say, I don't like that, than to throw a toy at me, right? Or to smash a window because they're angry because they didn't get the toy train that they wanted. So we talk about teaching regulation there. All right, let me just go through this. So we've got the last point that I wanted to cover, number 4, was reinforcement. So it's important always that when we're teaching a new skill, when our kids cope and tolerate something, that we reinforce them more for it than they used to get. So even if your child has coped with no, I want you to try to increase your positive praise and reinforcement. So when we talk about reinforcement, it's something that increases the likelihood of a behavior in the future, okay? It's can be seen differently as a reward. And I talk a bit more in detail about this in my courses. But really, it's not necessarily just a treat or a bribe. That is different. It's something that increases your child's behavior in the future. So if your child copes with no, I want you to do something to help them feel good about the situation. Maybe they do get something special out of that. Maybe they get a big hug and spin around from you and tickles, right? You just increase your positive engagement with them, which might be enough to reinforce that capacity of coping. Maybe they get, 5 minutes on the iPad because they just coped with not being able to go outside when they asked. They coped with the no response there. It could be anything, but I want you to think about increasing reinforcement for the positive skill throughout your day. And it might be paying attention to times when your child copes with not getting what they want. Maybe they already have that capacity, and it's just that, there's so many times when we're busy and we're going through the routines that we don't realize our kids are actually coping with lots of these situations where they're not getting what they want. So I want you to pay attention to those and reinforce your child for them, increase that reinforcement for them. Finally, I am going to do a quick summary of how we respond. So what do we do when our children have escalated? I like to reinforce, I like to really reiterate that we as the adult have to remain calm ourselves. Okay? We need to be the foundation. Now, you might be going crazy inside. You might be feeling like screaming, frustrated, and like about to just blow your brain. But I want you to work on controlling your own emotions, because this is what we want to model to our children. We need to model the regulation that we want them to engage in. It doesn't mean they're just going to stop and copy you. That is not what's going to happen. But the more you model, the more they will learn that. So you're going to have a calm voice, face, and body yourself. You're going to be neutral. You are going to use few words. You might acknowledge, so you can go, it's tricky, hey? I find it tricky too. We can get through it, right? So you can say an acknowledgement, an encouraging phrase, but in some situations, I don't say anything at all. It really depends on the child. You can give the child space. So I often give the child space as long as it's in a safe environment. If they start to headbang or do something like that, I might put my hand under their head, I might cradle, I might guide them to the couch somewhere where it's soft and they're not going to injure themselves. I'm going to avoid any lengthy explanation or bargaining or, rationalization or explanation. So I'm not going to say, it was nothing. Why can't you just accept this? It doesn't matter. It's okay. It's so small. It's not an issue, right? I'm not going to do that. Bargain or bribing, I'm not going to say, if you stop screaming, we'll get an ice cream, right? That's bribery, and that's not reinforcement, and that's not going to help your child learn the skills and capacity, right? You're teaching your child, I have a meltdown, I carry on a lot, and then my parent tries to convince me to stop, and then I get what I want, right? So it's a bad learning pattern. It's okay if you do it. We all do it. I've even done it, and I know to not do it, right? So we do get stuck in these automated responses when we're stressed, right? And when we don't feel comfortable and confident with our skills. So my intention here is to build your confidence so you can feel like you can stay calm and you know your child can get through this. So you'll stay close to your child when they're escalated. You won't talk too much, you will reduce the demands and reduce the stimulation as much as possible. So maybe you move some things away. Maybe you turn music off if there's music playing. You don't explain the expectation again. You don't remind them too much of anything because they've been told no. They already know that they don't get what they want. They're just not happy with it. I also teach redirection, the redirection response, which is when you go and engage in an activity. Maybe it's one of the choices that your child had when you gave them a choice of 2 other options, and you engage in something that they enjoy that might be regulating for them, but you engage in that on your own or with another peer or another child, a sibling or something. So a great example I like to give is blowing bubbles. So I might get the bubbles out and I'll go blow them in the kitchen. For example, my child's having their meltdown in the lounge room. I know they're safe, they're okay there. Or I'll just be 2 meters away from them starting to blow bubbles and pop them myself and be like, yay, pop, 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 right? I might start to make some comments or some indication that I'm having fun here, but it's calm, right? I might play some music. Music can be regulating for our kids. Maybe you start to play a song that they really like, okay? You're not inviting them. You're not saying, hey, come, let's listen to the Wiggles, right? I'm not inviting them in. I'm just playing, and I might start to sing along if I know that's not irritating for them. So keep in mind to not do things that are further irritating. So engage in something that you know they like, and soon enough they will realize, mum or dad is having a great time over there with something I like. I want to go play, okay? And it helps them regulate. It helps them realize that they're not getting the attention for the behavior, if that happens to be the part of the function of the behavior. It helps them to show that they can calm and redirect themselves, right? So you're there, it can be seen as some co-regulation, right? You're modeling the regulation you want them to follow. You're there, you might be close to them, but just not engaging too much with them. So you're helping build that capacity. So there you go. They are some tools and strategies you can use to help teach your child to tolerate no and how to respond when your child does not cope. There are other strategies I teach. It's not always just simple. Know that reactive strategy isn't always the only reactive strategy we might give. There could be others to support our child's functioning that I do go into more detail in my courses, Understanding Autism Behavior, the Parent Roadmap, that's my mini course, and my Busting Behaviors Protocol, which is my 12-week multi-module course that also includes accountability calls every week. If you're interested in any of these, please send me a DM through Facebook. You can also email me. If you're already on my email list, I will be sending out an email very shortly to you to let you know of these new offerings I have, which I'm really excited about. So, closing message, thank you for attending today. Thank you if you're watching the replay. I want you to go and connect with your child. The first part of positive behavior change is connection, right? Take some time to play with your child, follow their lead, play on their terms, do what they want to do. Don't do what they don't want to do, right? If they tell you don't do that, don't do that. So we want to connect with our child. We want to copy what they're doing. We want to find different ways to engage with them so that it's fun and interactive. And this is the foundation from which we can build more positive behavior and rapport with our children. It also helps when you know you've got a strong connection and foundation with your child. You can put in place these more I guess, difficult response strategies where maybe you're not engaging with your child, because you know you can always come back to that foundation. And I see that in my therapy all the time. I build a really strong rapport with children who I work with. They often like to play with me. We can often be silly and fun. But then there are times when I am neutral and I'm following through with my expectations, and I set the boundaries. But I know that I always have that connected foundation I can go back to. So connect with your child. I wish you great success and have a wonderful day. And I want you to help understand your child, lead with love, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.